Well, folks, welcome to another edition, an audio edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. We have a lady here who is celebrating, or has celebrated a very, very special milestone, and we're gonna chat with her about it. Miss Anna Z, how we doing?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm great. So, 35 years last week. So, if I'm doing my math, you had to go on the air about when you were 10. Is that about right?
Yeah, I actually started in high school. I was volunteering at the Queen's University radio station in Kingston, Ontario. And so from high school on, I've always worked in radio. It's basically the only job I've ever had, and I love it.
Well, and I'd love to talk to you about, what it's like now versus and the changes that you've seen. But 35 years in one spot for anything is almost unheard of these days. I can remember when in Dartmouth we heard about the Q coming on, and every day we turned on that that frequency, and it was, and then one day it just fired up, and there she was. What do you remember about that when everything was kind of getting started?
Well, I wasn't here for the beginnings of Q104. I would have come about 4 years later.
Okay.
But I've obviously been entrenched in the history of it, hearing the stories and being around, a lot of the people like Bob Powers and J.C. Douglas from back in the day, Mike McFarland. And so I heard a lot of the crazy stories from back then, but it was neat to be there. So I would have been there like 4 years later after the station had signed on. And the reason why I stay is because of the people, past and present. It's just an incredible group, and it's really hard to find people that you love working with for that many years.
Well, it's a long time, and it's a long time for any one person in any one spot. And I'm sure you've seen, you the folks that you mentioned. I know JC, I know Mike, I know Bob really well. They've basically had careers and then left for different careers, and you're still there. What you mentioned that you love radio. What do you think that maybe has had you loving it maybe more than some other folks, and being able to have the longevity that you've had?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I always loved radio, and it was just magical. We grew up with a lot of music in the house. My dad used to work construction by day and then fix radios and VCRs and TVs at night, and he loved it so much. So I get that from him, and it was always on in the house, and I was like Eddie Duggan. I used to win a lot of contests and concert tickets, albums, and so it's like, now I can't win anything. I haven't been able to win anything for a long time, so I envy Eddie that he can win so much, and other listeners. But so the magic of radio for me is the immediacy and the music and the personalities. That's why I've always loved it. And for me, having stayed here this long and having the same shift for that long a time, it's definitely lucky. There have been layoffs over the years and stuff, and I've always been, thankfully, not been one of them. And I would say it's luck, big time.
Well, I'm going to say something here in a second, but you mentioned Eddie, and yesterday was Eddie's birthday. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did. I sent him a birthday message. Yeah.
He's got the biggest horseshoe up as that I've ever seen in my life. I've known that guy since like 1987, I do believe. Great guy, and interesting that he's the contest wizard, kind of in the same month that you had your big anniversary, and your first official day was you told me before we started recording.
It was January 17th, but head office, like on the record, it's 17th. On air, though, it was the 18th, the next night.
Right on. So you mentioned luck, and I'm going to throw this out here because you've been around, and when you say to anybody you've been around for a while, it can sound good and bad. But I'm going to have to say in HRM, you're a brand because Anna Z in the afternoon, but you're not only the afternoon DJ, you're doing the program directing, you're doing a lot of back end stuff. And I guess one of the things that I would say is when people say, oh, you're in radio, you're only on there for 3 hours. I know you're going to laugh when you hear that, but talk about what it is actually like. It's a whole heck of a lot more than the on air time that you have to take part in.
Yes, I'm just going to correct you. I'm not program director. I'm just music director.
Well, hey, that's most important, I think.
Yeah, I schedule the music, and I'm actually scheduling the music for Q104, for St. John, for Moncton, for New Glasgow, part of the Q network now.
Right.
And so I do that on top of being on the air. So I know people think, oh, you just must sit back and listen to music and stuff. No, it's pretty busy. I mean, obviously it beats so many other jobs, but I mean, I get to listen to music while I'm working, but you're not sitting down doing stuff. There's so many other things going on behind the scenes. And I think it's like any job that, you think, oh, that would be, so easy to do. And if you think you can do it, that's great. But there's so much more involved, as everybody knows, with any job that you do, right?
No question. I think in music, it's funny, right? Because it's like, if you're a musician, you got to learn how to play. If you're a DJ or an on-air personality, you got to learn that. And I think people... so you're in a band and you charge a rate and they go, well, that's too much. Okay, well, you're not paying for that one performance. You're paying for the years and years and years that got that musician there to be able to perform. Same thing with what you're doing. And I think sometimes what happens is people mistake what's a fun industry for an easy industry.
Sure. And I do say it definitely is fun. And when they say that when you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And that is so true. I'm very lucky to be passionate about what I do, and so it just makes things a lot better.
So in addition to playing, I get this little podcast. I've had the opportunity to interview people. You've had the opportunity to interview people. I get asked this all the time, and it's kind of a cheesy question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there one person that you've had the opportunity to interview that you were just like, wow, that was one that I never thought was going to be amazing, and it was probably one of the most amazing chats that I had?
Well, it's funny because I have interviewed so many artists and great bands, and the one that sticks out big time is Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Nice.
So what happened was Mike McFarland and I had switched shifts so he could go to the concert, and he was supposed to interview Bruce Dickinson, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. So when I come in to do my shift for 6 o'clock, Mike says, he didn't call. I said, okay, great. I'm on the air for 5 minutes, and I get a call from Barry Kent from EMI Capitol Records saying, yeah, Anna, I've got Bruce Dickinson with me. We're going to be there in 5 minutes. This is in the Queen Square building in Dartmouth, and I'm freaking out because I wasn't supposed to do the interview. I had never done an interview, and I really, at that point, didn't know much about Iron Maiden. Mike was the super fan, and so I'm just like, oh my God. So at the time we were playing records, and I had to put on like Stairway to Heaven. We were on the 19th floor of the penthouse of the Queen Square building, go down the flight of stairs, take the elevator down, go to check to see if they're there. They're not there. Then do the same thing, go back upstairs, put on Freebird, go back downstairs, and then they finally showed up. And I said to Bruce, I thought I'd just better be honest with him. I said, listen, I wasn't supposed to do the interview. I'm really sorry. I really don't know much about you or anything. And he just turned to me and he said, don't worry, love, I'm a great talker. And he was awesome. He was so sweet and so nice, put me at ease. And then I got him to intro a song. I got him to introduce an Iron Maiden song, and so he comes on and says, hi, this is Bruce Dickinson. This is Run to the Hills on Rock 103. And I just about died. I was wearing a Rock 103 T-shirt, and he was reading it off my shirt, and it was just like, oh, my God. But he was so nice, and I'm just so grateful for that, because that could have been a disaster.
Well, and the whole thing about you always remember that either first or bad experience, but you probably know this by now. I mean, Bruce can be known to be everything from an absolute gentleman to an absolute persnickety guy, right? So to have that awesome experience with one of the legends of heavy metal is amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't learn all this stuff till after the fact, because I grew up on basically top 40 radio. I worked at top 40 radio, and it wasn't until I got to Moncton at Rock 103 that I got into rock. sure, I had my older sister that brought rock records home, and I got to know them and stuff. But I was really top 40 at the time. But boy, I learned a lot and know a lot now, and rock is my favorite genre for sure.
So, you 35 years, long time, like I say, and you know it, and you've seen everything from where it started and the way it used to be to where it is now, and all points in between. What are some of the biggest changes, I guess, that you've seen that have taken place in your industry that, good, bad, or otherwise, are here to stay?
Well, I started with records, with vinyl, and then we went to carts, which is like 8 tracks, and then cartridges, and then to CDs, and then to the computer. And so I would say that was a lot, and so quick to go from vinyl and that whole format change to computers. It's just crazy. And, the biggest change, too, is social media. That never used to be a part of our lives, and now it is, part of your job, and it's everything. Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and, TikTok for some people. It's a lot.
It's funny because I talk to people all the time about social media, and you'll be playing a show, and if you do a great song, typically it gets posted, but if you have a flub up in a song, it's up there sometimes before the song's even over in the show, right? And everything is so right now, and I talk to people all the time too about if I see one more 6-year-old playing the drums to Tom Sawyer perfectly, I'm going to throw up. But that's where we are, right? That's where we are. Like, literally, that's the business now. Like, if you're not keeping up on that stuff, you're falling behind.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be totally on top of it. And there's a lot of negative stuff too, but there's a lot of positive stuff. So, it's the good and the bad, and you got to take both, right?
Yeah, I don't mind. And we started our little Barstools and Bandtalk, and it was truthfully going to be a little 5-week project that we could start playing again. And then, obviously we know what happened over those 2 years. How did your industry pivot, or did your industry have to pivot as hardly as everybody else when that was taking place?
You mean during COVID?
Yes.
I think, from the office point of view, people stayed home, and so the only people that were allowed in the building were the announcers. And I know the morning show had to separate, and some worked from home. But I know Tom and I and Adam Marriott at the time, we all went into the station every day, and it was Bobby Mack at one point, and then it was BJ Wilson, and then Jillian was from home. So, and then once we had barriers in there, all 3 of them were able to go, but there was no one else in the building. It was just the announcers allowed.
Yeah, it was a really kind of a strange time. I remember the first show that we did, and I was talking to somebody about this. I was at a benefit yesterday for a gentleman, and I like, obviously, the shows now with a lot of people at them, but when things first opened up, and every show kind of reminded me of Elvis in Vegas, 1973. They're sitting at tables, golf clapping, smoking cigarettes, and enjoying the show, right? And it was one of those things where I think what COVID did was the people that were kind of mailing it in or weren't, giving their all, kind of were exposed a little bit because people were actually paying attention as opposed to dancing and what they normally do at a show, right? Would you agree with that?
And that's the other thing too, was the events. We'd be out there at all of, the concerts and this and that, basketball games and Moosehead games, and all of that just was gone. It was very weird.
But now we're back. So last question for you, young lady, here, because I know you just got off the air and you got some stuff to do. What are you, and this is a tough one, I think, but 2023, I just decided, 2022 was pretty broken up. I had a pretty good year from March till the end of it, but I decided 2023 is going to be a big year for me personally. What's going to happen for Anna Z in 2023?
Oh my God. Oh, I'd have to think about that. I just hope I stay well. I don't catch COVID.
Yeah.
I'd like to do some traveling and get out there and see a lot more of the bands and events. I'm going to see Sloan this Saturday. I'm going to see Joel Plaskett February, and just doing more of that. I was at the Carlton last weekend, so it's nice to get out again and do that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
just more of that. You know what? Socializing. I think that what I really found was the friends and the family. Like, boy, you really miss seeing people, and I'm doing a lot more of that, getting together with people.
And it's great. So, you know what, Superstar, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. Congrats on the 35. It's that's a huge milestone. I mean, like, you know, you're probably not even processing it right now, but that's huge. And you know, with the first 35, you know, some people go, oh my God, but you know, the next one's actually the fun one, right? Because that's where things get real, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sean. And it's great that you guys are doing what you do, and you're bringing local music and letting everybody know about all the events and stuff like that. And congratulations to you guys on having a successful website and podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And hey, Anna Z, what's your time slot, Anna, so that we can get you some new listeners out there?
10 to 3, Monday to Friday.
Probably the best shift in the business. You don't have to get up early, right?
You're right. It is.
Right on. Thanks a lot for doing this. That's right. Thanks a lot for doing this. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Sean.
All right.